Spreads are out on the 17 Texan games this year. We won't go through all of them here. I just think there are a few interesting ones. For what it's worth, for those looking to get down early here, I had seen the spread open at -2.5 for the opener against the Rams. Rams favored by 2.5. The outlet I'm looking at now for the 17 is the Rams at -3.5. I kind of like the Texans. If that thing's over a field goal, I like the Texans plus 3.5 in that game. If you're giving me more than a field goal in that game, I'll take it. Feels about right. 3 feels about right in that game. That feels like a game that could come down to who's got the ball last. The Rams offense typically, at times at least, they struggle early in the season, and part of the philosophy or theory, the theories. Probably some people about that is that they don't play any of their starters in the preseason. Yeah. It's like they try to rest their starters as much as possible. So D'Amico's defense does not need to, as much, whether they play guys or not, it's just a lot easier to play defense without as much practice. So I like the defense versus old Matt Stafford in that game, if his wife lets him play. And but what I get nervous about is the Texans' offensive line versus a very good defensive line. Yep. Everything I just said about how, hey, if you got a good pass rush especially, you can just get out on the field and get after it. The Rams can do that. So my biggest concern really is, what does the offensive line look like week 1? Are they ready for a team like the Rams defense? Yeah. I don't know what the total is on that game, but if I'm listening to you kind of handicap and break that thing down, might be an under game. That might be a game where the two defenses eat. That might be a 20-17 kind of game. Both defensive fronts are getting after it and putting the opposing offense in bad down and distance situations and things like that. I could definitely see. Take away for spreads on these games. The Texans are favored in 9 of their 17 games. So if we're just going by the spreads, and it never goes this way, but the Texans, that lines up with what Vegas thinks about them overall. Their win total is 9.5 in most places. They're favored in 9 of their 17 games. The thing that is most eye-opening to me, Seth, is that a lot of these teams, whereas last year the Texans, I think, went into the season viewed as an ascending team that you could talk about in the same breath with the teams, like the contenders in the AFC. And obviously, we didn't know how things were going to go with the offensive line, but I think they were viewed that way in this community, in the gambling community. They're viewed right now on the same level as teams like the Buccaneers and the Seahawks. These are games, the games where the spreads are under 2. Texans -1.5 at home against the Buccaneers, which means on a neutral field, the Buccaneers would be favored against the Houston Texans. Yeah. No, and I think that all makes sense if you just look at for one, the defense for the Texans is very, very good, but they allowed way more points than a genuinely elite defense. And it's not just because the offense wasn't good. It's because the Texans had way too many breakdowns in the secondary, and they allowed a boatload of passing touchdowns. They were one of the league leaders in long touchdown passes for touchdowns. Yeah. They would play really, really well 95% of the time and let up a big play. Yep. So they need to hem some of those things. Actually making big plays. They're a league leader in interceptions and sacks, tackles for a loss, all of those things. They were in the top 3 or 4 for all those categories. They just have to be more consistent. But the offense just wasn't good. It wasn't a good offense. So you can't, if the defense allowed they were 16th in scoring, I think, or the team was 16th in defense in touchdowns or points allowed, and then the offense was a middling to subpar offense for most of the year. Yep. So that they should be a 500 team right now. The Niners are favored at NRG Stadium as of right now in Week 8. The 49ers disrespect on the road. The 49ers, and now Vegas also thinks their win total is 10.5. Like, Vegas just flat out obviously thinks the Niners are a better team than the Texans. That one I can get with just based on pedigree and history. The Broncos, a week later, are favored at NRG Stadium. Bo Nix, Sean Payton, and the Denver Broncos, as of right now, are a 1.5-point favorite at NRG Stadium. The team that got blown out by Buffalo in the first round of the playoffs, like 38-7, and who we were all laughing at, during the Russell Wilson year, and almost laughing at them on draft night when we thought maybe they overdrafted Bo Nix.
that team is favored against you in your stadium next year.
That's the other part of it that goes into, all right, the games at home where the Texans are underdogs versus other mediocre teams. The Texans, some of those performances that they've had versus good quarterbacks and like how bad the stat line looks for some of them. All right, great. Yep, they intercepted him 5 times. And they lost the game, and partly because Jared Goff made some big plays in the second half. Yeah. Like they got Sam Laporta went off for on a huge long reception. Mm-hmm. They've got to clean up a few of those little things, because even in some of those bad stat lines from those quarterbacks, the quarterbacks did some really good things in those games as well.
Yeah,
the 49ers though, by the 10.5 win total for them, part of that is that they've got the easiest schedule in the NFL.
They do have the easiest schedule. That's a good point.
Win total.
Yeah, that's true. They're playing a last place schedule this year.
Yeah, so it's actually like by pretty large margin. When you base it on Vegas win projected totals, they've got like a healthy lead in the easiest schedule.
They play a lot of bad teams. No, that's a really good point. They do. And now that said, should they be favored at home? Should they be favored at NRG Stadium against the Houston Texans, San Francisco?
I don't think so. I don't believe that they should be.
Yeah, like I'm taking the points in that game. I would take the points. I mean, I feel like they're gift wrapping you some of these. I'm not disrespecting the Niners or the Broncos. I just don't think they're good enough teams with good enough quarterbacks to be favored on the road at NRG Stadium, where the Texans made mush out of quarterbacks last year.
Well, now, but also the other big thing about the 49ers, specific to that matchup with the Texans, is George Kittle. And George Kittle, he of the newly league-leading contract amongst tight ends. Mm-hmm. The Texans were bad against tight ends last year.
Sure. Yeah, no, they're going to give up points and yards. I get that. Buffalo is favored by 3.5 at NRG Stadium on the Thursday night game. So the Texans are home dogs in a handful of games this year.
Yeah.
At least 3.
They've got that's where it'd be interesting to see if the Texans come off on a heater in the first couple games and the offense looks really good.
Yeah.
Then these things might change pretty dramatically, because I think by far the biggest factor is that you have an offense that was not a good offense last year. You're going to face some really good defenses. You can't look at a team. The offense is more consistent from year to year than defense is. So you can't even really lean into the defense. If you're an odds maker, you're not leaning into the Texans defense as much as you're looking at the offense and thinking like, man, that was a moribund conglomeration of underperforming dudes last year.
Yeah, it's you know what? The early part of the season, right up to the Ravens game, the first 4 games of the season, I think the first 4 games and the last 4 games. I think the Texans have a real opportunity to get off to a good start. At the Rams will be a tough game, but these games are all like these. But it's a 3.5-point spread. The Texans will be, they'll be fine. They'll compete. That's the toughest of those games, though. You come home Monday night, Buccaneers, place is going to be rocking. You go play the Jags on the road. You haven't lost on the road in the division, and to the Jags on the road in forever. And then the Titans. The Titans are here. You can't lose to them 2 years in a row at home. I feel like that's 3-1 right there, and I feel like down the stretch it's a 3-1 schedule as well, with the Cardinals, Raiders, and Colts all at home, with the road trip to the Chargers in between. It's the in-between part that, boy, there are some gauntlets in there in between.
What does artificial intelligence have to say? Did you go to AI yourself and ask? Okay.
The article used AI to come up with the scores of the Texans games, and the AI projections for the Houston Texans, 12-5. They agree with you. You're basically AI, Seth, is what you are.
Oh, that was my prediction yesterday.
12-5 was your prediction.
Yeah. I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic about Nick Caley in the offense right now.
The 5 losses are, and they've got scores for all these too. So how are we feeling if these are the scores of these games? They lose the 5 losses for the Texans, according to AI. They lose the opener to the Rams 27-24.
Okay, I feel all right about that.
They cover, yeah.
Sean wins money if he places that bet today.
I go plus 3.5, right. They then win, so they start 3-1, and then they lose to the Ravens 31. What?
I'm just
anticipating
it. Oh, yeah.
31-21.
Oh.
31-21.
Did the Ravens at least score late?
That's my question. Yeah, like how do we get to the 31?
Or if the Texans scored late, then I feel atrocious about all that.
Well, I feel like if the Ravens scored 31, it means Derrick Henry ran for 186 yards and Lamar Jackson threw for 250 and ran for another 70.
Are our defensive ends flailing around in space trying to trying to tackle the running back when the quarterback has the ball and vice versa. Because that was fun.
Yeah.
That's a whole lot of, there's an added level of stress if you ever played defensive end in college versus a good option team. That when you're watching your team struggle versus option, it's only defensive ends have this knot in their stomach that they get when they screw that up.
That's right.
The Texans did it like 20.
Out of the bye week after that loss to the Ravens that had you go, ugh, and I agree with you. They go on a 5-game winning streak. They beat the Seahawks by 3. They beat the Niners by 3. They beat the Broncos by 6. They beat the Jags 31-27. They beat the Titans.
These are all close wins.
They're in 26-22. Well, but that's what the Texans do, right? Remember, I mean, they play a lot of close games. Then the Bills come to town for Thursday Night Football, and thus comes the third loss of the season, 33-29. Now, that would be an exciting Amazon Prime game right there.
Yeah.
33-29, a high-scoring. I'm here for it. I wish the Texans were on the other end of it, but that at least sounds like an entertaining final score right there.
Stick around to make a couple of Prime purchases afterwards. At that point,
a couple QR codes, baby.
You lose at home to the Bills. I'll tell you one thing. Those Amazon Prime games, man, they tailor the advertising to stuff that you yourself want to see.
Exactly what they said they were going to do to us when they got the rights to it. Yeah,
I've cross-checked this, and people aren't seeing the same ads. Nope. And man, everything that pops up, I'm like, I need to buy. Yeah, I know what they're doing. So you play the Bills in Week 12.
Yeah.
So it hurts more because it's to a playoff caliber team likely towards the end of season, and you've got that stretch coming up where you've got the Colts the next week, but then the Chiefs. So another big test.
So they beat the Colts the next week in Indianapolis again, 27-21. This is the score. This one hurts. They go to the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. Chiefs T.
Oh.
And for something like AI, that's a big blowout. I feel like AI tends to skew towards whatever the computers say, and the computers never predict 41-7 or anything like that. That's a pretty big margin there for a computer-generated margin, 35-20. That one would sting, especially having lost to the Bills 2 weeks before that. Like this, that's where you're really feeling. They would be at that point, Seth, they would be 9-4 on the season, which is a good record. But their losses they would have losses to the Ravens, Bills, and Chiefs. So we would be coming in on Monday after that. The narrative going into that Chiefs game is they need to win this game so we can talk about them like they're on that level. And
still, they're in that classic. Nope, there's a glass ceiling, and they can't bust through.
That's it.
Yep. Don't worry, everybody. At the end of this schedule, I'm going to tell you something. Whatever you don't like about this AI generated, I'm going to give you a little AI generated tidbit about the Texans.
Okay, good. Let's get through the rest of this because I want to hear that. So they come back, and on that stretch of the 3 of the final 4 games at home, they beat the Cardinals. They thump the Raiders 34-17. Lose to the Chargers 26-23 in L.A., and then they beat the Colts at home 30-24, thus finishing 12-5 with all 5 losses to playoff teams from last year.
Oh, that'd be the worst feeling. That would be the worst feeling is if you're 12-5, but you lost to all these really good teams. If those teams are good this year.
Yep.
Okay. Yesterday, when I was watching the schedule release videos from other teams, I wanted to see how the Ravens. So when they do, I think they did a Minecraft theme too, or some video game themed thing.
Yeah.
And it was a video game themed thing, and they got to Lamar Jackson when they showed the Texans, and it just said 100%. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's reference to Lamar Jackson never having lost to the Texans.
Oh, yeah.
But because, as we've established, I've been really stupid the last couple days, I wanted to fact check myself. I'm like, right? Yeah, he's never lost to the Texans. So I just real quick Googled, has Lamar Jackson ever lost to the Texans? Dude. And, Google gives you that little AI overview at the top now.
Yeah. I know where you're going.
You'll be pleased to know, Sean, when I asked, it gets even funnier, though, every step along the way. I asked, has Lamar Jackson ever lost to the Texans, expecting the answer to be no. Yes, Lamar Jackson has lost to the Texans. The New York Giants beat him in the NFC. He is 0-1 in the playoffs against the Texans.
What? What the hell? All right.
I don't. How?
What does that even mean?
How can this be the thing that's about to replace everybody else? Now I know this is a standard generic version of AI, but it's sports. It is so incredibly bad. I don't understand how it's so bad at sports.
If AI were a person, they are definitely the person that goes to a Super Bowl party just to watch the commercials.
You know what? This might be a big joke on us all. Who creates AI? The guys who are bad at sports.
Yeah, that's true.
And yet, a lot of the super nerds that are like ridiculously smart about sports stats and everything. Those are the kids, your valedictorian in high school who majors in quantum physics in college and can give you every box score from every game the Yankees played back until 1965.
Oh, my God. Yeah, dude.
And yet they're so bad at sports.
So bad. This is where I thought you were going to go with it, and this is why I was giving AI, obviously, way too much credit, is that, I mean, in my mind, not only have the Texans never beaten Lamar Jackson, they've never really come close that I can remember. Like the first time they ever played him I remember the first time they ever played him was in 2019. It was his MVP year, his first MVP year. The Texans had just beaten the Jags in London like a drum, had a bye week, and we were all pumped up coming off of that bye week in 2019. Like, here, let's go. Let's show Lamar Jackson what's up. And he beat them 41-7. He destroyed the Texans, and I don't know that there's been a close game between the two teams since Lamar Jackson got it. That's what I thought. I thought AI was going to go, oh, Seth, not only have they never beaten Lamar Jackson, they've never come close.
No, Sean, put yourself in my size 13s, and think of this. The reason I even Googled it is because I've been so dumb the last couple years. Right. I've got a history of brain trauma. Right. I just, I want to be sure that I'm on the straight. I just got to pay attention to this stuff.
Sure.
So I'm like, all right, I know he's never lost to the Texans, but let me double check this. And then I'm reading.
Do you still have it up
from a computer that's supposed to be way smarter than me? Yes, Lamar Jackson has lost to the Texans. I'm like, and then I'm reading the New York Giants beat him in the NFC. And I'm like, what am I reading here? What's wrong with my head? Why is that even in the conversation?
Dude, the worst part about that is, of course, he's lost to the Texans. The Giants beat him. Like, what are we?
In the NFC. And he's 0-1 in the playoffs against the Texans. And I swear to God,
totally
I was sitting there. I'm like, no, because they were in the playoffs last year, and it wasn't. No, that can't be.
Oh, man, AI, you suck. Messing with Seth's head. That's just mean.